And that's it. So
Don't stop the music, man. That was slapped.
Yeah, that was good music. Is that kind of music that would play on like a subway?
Chill?
Probably not.
Little chill vibe.
You don't play that kind of music on trains?
If they did, I mean, I'd have to kind of filter it out to be able to hear the conversation.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been on a train like that. Is it a subway or a train?
It is for part of it's a light rail, and so it does go underneath the city for a time through downtown. So, but I don't know what the technical description is. Nobody here calls it a subway. We call it the light rail or the one line.
All right, fair enough. Before I started the funky music, and we went live here, we were talking about your experiences doing SE on the light rail, the train, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, continue telling us more about that.
Yeah, it's so I first had the idea after Sound Epistemology had come out to Westport and filmed me on the Westport waterfront, and then we agreed to that maybe we would collab again in the future. And then one day I was commuting home from work, and it all of a sudden occurred to me, it's like, wait a minute, like the train while you're commuting seems like the perfect place to have SE chats, because as long as you can be mobile, right, and if you're filming or you're recording it, you have that capability. People don't have a lot to do when they're on the train, right? They're not rushing off to get somewhere, as they often are when you're set up in a public park or on a university campus. And so, it just popped into my mind. It's like, wow, this would like be ideal. Like you recruit a conversation on the train platform, you get on the train with them and just ride it until the conversation's over, and then you get off and rinse and repeat. And pick the side of the train tracks that has the most people on it, and just see where you wind up. And so the second I got off the train, I called up David from Sound Epistemology and said, dude, I just had this brainwave, and you got to tell me if I'm an idiot, because this seems brilliant. It's like, it's either brilliant or it's really stupid. And he said, yeah, that sounds like it could work. And so we arranged a day for him to come out, and we spent the day. We spent about 7 hours doing that. We filmed 5 conversations, had a lot of great food in random neighborhoods of Seattle, and it was pretty close to exactly the way I had envisioned it the first time out. And so now I carry a portable audio recorder, a little Tascam, with me in my backpack. And when I'm commuting to work, I try to get a couple of chats on the way into work. So I have about a 20-minute train ride north, and then a 20-minute bus ride, and then reverse that on the way back. And I have a much higher hit rate than I do when I'm like out at the coast on the waterfront, or if I'm 3 of us went out to University of Washington yesterday, spent all day at University of Washington, and we were pretty aggressive at flagging people down. We only got 5 chats all day. So yeah, it's been a remarkable way to talk to people.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting way. I wouldn't have thought to try to talk to people on trains. I mean, I don't have trains around where I am, so that, naturally I wouldn't think of that. But
yeah,
even so, like, who thinks of that?
It seems to work on buses as well. I had this great experience the other day where I got on the bus, and I like to, I don't know, this is kind of goes way back to when I was a little counterculture kid growing up in LA. But when I get on the bus, I go immediately to the back of the bus and sit in the very back seat. And there was a guy sitting there on the other side, and I started to ask him, hey, would you be interested in doing a little interview while we ride the bus together? And he's like, je ne parle anglais. He only spoke French. But there was a guy in the next seat up, and he said, hey, I'd be game to do that. And so I talked to him and started the recorder. I said, hey, I'm Nick. What's your name? He's like, my name's Mike. And I said, well, what do you want to say that you believe? And he says, how about this? Just don't be a fucking dick, dude. And so we talked about that for only, unfortunately, about 3 minutes, because he had to get off the bus with his 11-year-old daughter, who was right there, by the way, who seemed unfazed by Mike's language. And then after he got off, there was a guy on the other side, a little bit further up, who said, hey, that sounds really interesting. That was awesome. He's like, I'd love to do that, but not here. So we exchanged contact information. We're going to set something up for future. So I've just had remarkably good luck so far.
It's so cool.
All right. If you're interested in hearing about a great experience I had recently that was not on the train, you can shout me down, because I know we're going to talk about one of the first chats I did on the train. But last Sunday, I picked a church in the small rural conservative town that I live in, and I went for their after mass coffee, not mass, their after service coffee. And I talked with the pastor there, and I also got contact information from like 5 other people who thought this sounded like an awesome idea and wanted to have chats. And the chat with the pastor was so good. This is not your usual everyday conservative pastor. This guy knows philosophy. He knows epistemology. We had a very frank chat where he admitted he had no rational basis. Every time I did the outsider test for faith, he knew exactly where I was going, and he admitted, that doesn't really support me. You're right. It's like, Hinduism and Christian, like you can't make that determination. And at the end of the day, he didn't say, well, that's it, I'm giving up my faith. But he did pretty much agree that he didn't have a rational basis for it, which I thought was fantastic. I'm actually planning to, when we do some of our own review shows, or maybe here, I want to invite him on to be a panelist, because I feel like he'd be a great person to do reviews. Now, this could be his routine that he uses when he talks to atheists. Maybe this was his love bombing method to get me off his trail. I don't know that yet, but the first chat with him was very, very encouraging.
Was there contact before you arrived at this church?
Nope. I just showed up cold. Everyone was like, hey, a new person, welcome. Come on in. I had some coffee, I had some brownies, and started chatting with people. Say, hey, I do a podcast. Yeah.
Cool.
Back to the original goal of the first book, almost like, or just the vibe of it. That's great.
Yeah, a little bit. Although I have tried. Like I keep hearing Manual for Creating Atheists referred to as the Old Testament, and then it's like I think of and like Reed. I know you've been in this for a long time, so correct me and please don't be offended if I say this, but I think of Anthony as the father of modern SE. But I think like that's the New Testament, like SEing any claims and trying to be completely neutral. And so I try to be as neutral as I can and really only focus on the epistemology. And interestingly, with a few exceptions, almost nobody ever asked me what my opinion is on claims. Right? It's like they seem to get they either really like to talk about themselves, or they kind of get where I'm going with it. So yeah. Does anyone have any opinions about me calling Anthony the father of modern SE? A lot of people have been doing things for a long time, and Reed, I know you work with Peter. So he's the guy I started listening to And so a lot of what I do is like deeply colored by hours and hours and hours of listening to him. I actually, as I was remodeling our new house when we moved 2 years ago, I just had his stream basically on. I just basically listened to all of his chats while I was doing that. So I'm slowly starting to get enough of my own voice that I'm not hearing his voice in my head anymore, and I'm trying to listen to other creators. And of course, I've been like, just for the last month, been working very closely with sound epistemology, and now it's like my podcast is part of his channel. But I'm also eager to start to work with other creators, like, Pierce, you and I have had some conversations, and I'm looking forward, especially in this review, to hear what you and Reed and Matt and Mango have to say, because I'm always looking for feedback and improve and expand my skills.
I was wondering, Nick, what drew you to street epistemology? How'd you find it?
So I actually give a talk. I'll pitch this a week after next, Monday, September 9th, I think it is. I'm doing the RFRX talk, and it's a talk I give called The Four Disciplines, and it talks about kind of my journey. It started in May of 2017 when I responded to a flat earther on TikTok, or not on TikTok, on Twitter. And I did so naively thinking I had not encountered flat Earth before, and I did that thinking, oh, he just needs a gentle correction because he's so far off, and so began my dive into the rabbit hole. So I spent a lot of time after that watching flat Earth debunking stuff. So Fight the Flat Earth and Simon Dan and Creaky Blinder and Father Skeptic and all these channels, and did that for a long time. And then all of a sudden I started getting recommended atheist call-in shows. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I just get rid of that. Keep watching this other stuff because I found it to be very entertaining. And then, I got the Atheist Experience recommended so many times. I started listening to it, and, started listening to that. And sometime in there, Matt Dillahunty made me an atheist. And I've probably been an atheist for most of my life, but I didn't understand what the definition of atheism was, and I didn't really understand my own belief structure. And so, I think I kind of clarified some things there. And I think I probably discovered SE when Anthony appeared as a guest on one of the shows. And then I went and started listening to some of his stuff, or people were talking about street epistemology. I was like, what the heck is this? And I listened to some of his chats, and I was like, oh, this is a very different approach. And this feels a lot more like me, because I'm kind of a people pleaser. So I tend to like to not create conflict. And also I'm a people manager. So I kind of have to do, and I've been an animal control officer, and I've done all kinds of things where I've needed to do conflict resolution. And this just really seemed like a way to step into really potentially very contentious situations and go into them and have it not be contentious. And I've found since then that actually doing it and starting to practice it and starting to feel like I'm getting a little bit of facility with it, it's almost magic. Like the reactions, it seems so simple to me now, but I had this reaction the other day from maybe that was yesterday, this week anyway. A guy named Carrie that I talked to for just about 5 minutes, super short chat, because he only had a few stops to go on the train. And when we were done, he says, wow, that got really deep for such a short chat. Right. It's like, I have people compliment me when they're done. They're like, that was so much fun. I want to talk with you again. And we exchange contact information. So the feedback has just been fantastic, from people across the spectrum, and, people I definitely think have very confused thinking, or people I definitely disagree with. So I haven't had the opportunity the blessing yet to speak with any folks from the MAGA camp, but there's lots of those in my county, and it's an election year. So I'm figuring that those opportunities are coming up for me, and I'm interested to see how those chats go.
Nice.
That's something that's people don't want to talk about, surprisingly. I know people online talk about that like 24/7. You can always
Yeah.
find that somewhere, right? But in person, that is something that people really avoid talking about. And I'm not sure why there's a disconnect between online and in person. Maybe it's my region, maybe it's where I go. Maybe it's a me thing, but
Well, everyone's always told, like, don't talk about religion or politics. And so I think when you're in person, there's maybe a higher degree of personal risk, and people don't want to potentially step in a bed of fire ants. Um,
yeah.
by the way, while we're on that subject, I just want to, for the first time in the stream, just tell people, please just vote. So go register to vote if you're not registered to vote. If you are registered to vote, show up in November, cast your ballot.
All right, we'll get the review section started in just a moment. I just want to bounce back to one last thing. I just want to comment on one thing you said earlier, which I'm pretty passionate about, I think.
Hmm.
When I first discovered SE, Anthony's videos, I took a very similar path to you. It was don't put your opinion and don't bring any personal experiences of yours into the conversation. Don't inject anything
Yeah.
into the conversation. And for a long time, I really wanted to hold by that very strongly, very strictly,
Mhm.
and never ever inject anything that I wanted to bring. But I think lately I've been thinking that there might be a missed opportunity to actually build rapport or connection. I
Mhm.
think when we share something personal about ourselves, that the other person, that's a moment to give them a gift,
Yeah.
to allow them to hear something. And I mean, they can accept it, they cannot accept it. Sure, there's like a risk of turning into a debate. There's a risk of them thinking you're trying to steal the spotlight from them, et cetera, et
Mm.
cetera. But I think if you do it in a controlled manner, in a way that still allows them to feel respected, I
Mhm.
think it's something that can bring up something positive to the conversation.
I agree. I do something quite a bit that I've heard the standard advice is not to do, and it's something called parallel stories. And I didn't have a name for it for a long time. But when someone tells me about an experience they've had, a lot of the time I will relate something where I had a similar experience. And I am given to understand that sometimes people react badly to that. But but that's something that's partly my way of kind of relating to people, is saying, yeah, I kind of, I have a similar experience that reminds me of. Um, and I think maybe that's one of the things you're talking about. It's like bring yourself to the conversation, and I always try to bring myself to the conversation, and sometimes I even inject my opinion to a degree. Like I in a conversation, it's the first one that we're labeling the podcast on the Sound Epistemology channel. It dropped this week. It's called Wes, and Wes he was talking about a bunch of different measures that he thought measured the stability of a society. And I introduced the concept that the plural of anecdote is not data. So that's definitely a place where I kind of stepped a little beyond the SE, the asking questions, and just said, okay, I don't find this credible because, um, and so is that good? Is it not good? I don't know. We're probably going to do a review show on that. And as a matter of fact, I have Wes's contact information. He said he would love to participate in the review show as well. So, having the IL in the review show, I think that's something that Sound Epistemology does on their review shows, and I think it's kind of it's a unique way to go, because you can, have both sides of the conversation involved in the review.
Sounds interesting nonetheless. All right.
Yep.
Should we get started, or does anyone have any last words before we get started?
I
That's-
was a little interested, sorry, in what Reed and Matt maybe thought about the story thing, because I'm kind of new to SE, but when I joined, keeping myself out of it was a struggle a little bit, because I think what Nick, you're talking about, kind of naturally. And Reed and Matt and Pierce, or you've all been a part of it for a while. So what do you think about that addition, I suppose?
Do you have an example to share of one time that you did that?
Oh, me?
Mango or who?
Mango.
Oh gosh, it's just in all my conversations largely. I haven't done a lot of very formal SE. But yeah, connecting to people, supporting people. I want to relate through stories.
I might be able to give a quick example of what we mean when we are saying like these parallel stories, if that might help, Nick. Like, for example, there's a friend of mine who got in this accident, felt kind of guilty about it, even though it wasn't their fault. And I shared a story about how there was this one time where I made this mistake and I didn't do it on purpose. And I felt guilty about that situation. And it just was like, hey, I'm a human who has these situations as well. And I felt the same way that you felt.
Yeah, well, I try to be as amicable as I can in any interview that I have. Try to be friendly and maybe like as bubbly as I think I can be, but I'm in such a focused, like active listening sort of mode that it might serve me well to maybe do a little more relating, because I don't think I ever do that. Maybe I should.
One of the
I guess the parallel stories thing is just one form of revealing your bias about something, even though it's a personal story. Another way is just merely saying what you disagree with a person about, if you disagree with something about them important. And that's what we've been doing with Spectrum SC, is helping to facilitate disagreement in a civil, moderated way. But that could happen in regular SE conversations as well, revealing your bias. And that risks rapport loss, but I think that is more honest if mostly the main purpose of your conversation is to help people reflect on certain things you want people to reflect about, that you think people should reflect more about in society. So you're not out there just merely because you want to help people become better critical thinkers. Not all the time. Sometimes you have specific political or social goals you want people to reflect on.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's your goal, maybe you should reveal your bias a little more, just to keep things more honest.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can give someone permission to be a little bit more open or vulnerable than maybe they felt when you do it as well, potentially, if they're
Kind of modeling the behavior you want to see from them.
yeah, dig deep a little bit, like it's okay, you can do it here.
Being open, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Without further ado, we'll actually start the review now.
All right, we're going. So my name is Nick.
Okay. Hi, Nick.
Hi.
Eddie.
Eddie, good to meet you.
Good to meet you, Nick.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just, so this is something that I've been doing for a while now.
Okay.
And a couple of weeks ago, for the first time, a friend and I came down with all his YouTube gear and did this on the train. I'm here without cameras today, but I'm just recording audio. So to start with, can you think of something that you believe? And, it could be something that either you hold deeply or that, it's usually most interesting if it's something that might help determine how you act, like how you treat people, how you vote. because when we hold beliefs, and if you're not holding them for good reasons, then you affect other people, right?
Yeah. To think about that. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I guess I do have a belief that helping others is sort of a core value that I believe in.
Fantastic.
For multiple reasons.
Helping others is a core value, was the first thing that he said there.
And so I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. And is this something that's meaningful to you?
Yeah.
So what role does that play in your life? Like, how does that how does that give you meaning, or what does that mean to you in your life?
I think
Why does it, or he said, does that give you meaning? What role does that play in your life? I like those questions.
Yeah. One thing I want to say just about this opening is the first few chats I was having is I had the recorder off during the recruiting of the chat. So we've already had a little bit of a chat before this, right? So there's been a little bit of rapport building. There's been me explaining what I'm doing before I turn on the recorder. And I'm starting to change the way I do that, because I kind of like the thing. Again, this goes back to Anthony Magnabosco's videos, where you would hear him say to people, "Hey, how you doing? You're going on the trail. Like, are you interested in doing a chat?" So I've started doing more of turning on the recorder first before I start approaching people. And so not only do I get that preamble, and kind of you can see the process happening of getting them to agree to a chat, but also I'm thinking about maybe doing a show of just the rejections, because I end up getting lots of rejections as well. But I just wanted to say that about the beginning of the chat, because to me that sounded like a very abrupt start. It's like, "Hi, I'm Nick. So here's what we're doing," right? But there was a maybe a 2 or 3 minute period of preamble that came before that.
Yeah, I'd like to see the preamble, just because you said you have such a high success rate on the platform of getting people to interview.
Yeah,
and I want to hear what that sounds like, just to see, possibly figure out why that's the case.
Yeah, usually it's just I walk up to people and I say, "Hi, are you interested in doing a brief interview while we ride the train today?" It's usually as quick as that. And if people are interested, they're like, "Huh, what's it about?" And then I tell them about SE and all that. Or sometimes people go, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And then we're into it. And then I'm explaining it while we do it.
Cool.
Probably it's partially how I sort of my sense of self, kind of how I decide sort of what I do in terms of like career decisions, or how I interact with other people.
Nice.
International
Excellent.
District.
So-
Chinatown. Doors to my right.
What is the reason that that's important to you, or why do you believe that's a good thing to do?
I just it's kind of I don't know if not necessarily spiritual, but I feel like it's sort of like again, it's sort of
trying to
move
behind you
where
there.
I find some sort of meaning
Yeah.
in sort of kind of all the chaos. So I just and it makes me feel good, I guess, in some ways, probably.
Yeah.
So for multiple reasons, yeah.
Excellent. All right. So, why is something making you feel good a good reason to believe something?
I'm not sure I like how that was phrased, potentially.
Okay.
Let's see. You said like so the claim was like helping others is a core value, or like important, a good thing.
He said
Kind of the
it
claim, I
helped.
think.
It helps for him to find some meaning in all the chaos.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I love
Helps
that.
to
And he
find-
also said it makes, and then he also said it makes him feel good. So that phraseology is something I've been playing with, and I'll tell you, I'm getting better at figuring out where to use it. That's specifically a way of phrasing a question that that David does in sound epistemology. And to my mind, it takes you one layer deeper than sometimes the questions that I think to ask. So it's not just, why do you believe that's true, but why is blah a good reason to believe it's true? So it takes you from the reason to the method, right? So you're saying, why is that a good reason? Why is that a good, yeah, not just what's the reason, but why is that a good reason? And so I really liked the way that happened. So I'm trying to adopt that phraseology. How would you say it would be different? What do you think you would say in that situation? Or any of you, like this, not just the Pierce show, although it literally is the Pierce show.
I think my objection isn't with like asking why, like how the person got here, like why this got you to here.
Mhm.
I think it's more of like, I don't know that he's saying that anything in here is necessarily like true in the sense of like
Mhm.
truth claim about reality. It seems
Yeah.
like it's something else. I don't even know the right word to describe it.
So is it the belief? So because I do say, why is this a good reason to believe something? And I'm very conscious in that moment that his belief is a value and not a truth claim. And so maybe what I could have said would be, why does feeling good about something, why is that a good reason to hold a value? Do you think that's better, or are you?
I think it's better. Why is this a good reason to come to a conclusion? I don't know if I like that either. Reed,
Yeah.
do you have anything?
Yeah.
What do you think?
After hearing that back again, I'm kind of interpreting this as a kind of a different situation where this is maybe more of a strategic claim. What did he say? He's finding meaning in all the chaos. Is that what he said?
Yeah, like it helps him find meaning in life, and it makes him feel good.
So maybe that could be the most broad question you're asking yourselves right now is like, what's the best way to find meaning in life or meaning in all this chaos?
Yeah.
And one strategy to do that is to help others.
Right.
And one criteria to judge the quality of this strategy is to see if it makes you feel good. Because and what's the relationship between you feeling good and having meaning?
Ooh. So if I said, if I had said in that moment, do you feel like feeling good is a good criterion to use to judge whether a value is valuable? I'm reaching for something and I'm not quite getting it.
Maybe to judge
Here's
the strategy for finding meaning in the chaos.
Yeah.
Of helping others. Because if you just go with the claim, it's good to help others.
Yeah.
Nobody would disagree with that. That's a very benign, trivial, normative claim.
I like what Mango just put in chat, which is, why does that value align with how does that value align with who you are? I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, he did mention sense of self too. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to jump back to something he said a little bit before that, and listening to it this time, I caught it and I missed an opportunity, because he says that helping people is a value that might guide his career choice. And I missed an opportunity, I think, to say, oh, what do you do for work? And is that something, what did you choose for a career? And was that, did this value help get you there? Like if he's a doctor or a social worker, fill in the blank. That's interesting. If I met him again, that might be something that I go and do a follow-up on. That would be a great reason to have him here in the chat, right? On the review. It's like, hey, I just realized I missed an opportunity to ask you what you do for work, and how does the value of helping people, how did it get you into that career? And he might say, oh, I wasn't talking about me, dude. I'm a bond trader. I didn't get a bond trader vibe off of Eddie.
That would be really cool to actually review it with the people that you had the conversations with.
Yeah. I actually kind of also, I was mentioning, that I went to, a church this weekend and just walked into their after service social and started talking with people. And I ended up having a chat with the pastor, and his grasp of philosophy and of epistemology was so good. And his mind was so open about these kind of things. And he enjoyed the SE chat so much. I would love to start inviting him and maybe other people I've interviewed to be parts of reviews of other people, right? So get people who seem to be clueful. This weekend at University of Washington, we talked with this fellow named Arpad, and he picked kind of a silly thing as his belief, and we laughed about it while we were doing it. But he also saw the value in the process, and he took all the material about SEI. And he's potentially interested in learning to do it. And he hung out with us for a while. And, I think part of what street epistemology was supposed to be about was, creating an army of street epistemologists. And while it's, maybe not for the targeted purposes that, the Boghossian originally went after, I think we're still trying to get people to learn how to guide others into improving the way they think.
For sure.
All right, I've gone off on a deep tangent again, so I'm happy to get back to the chat.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a question of like, is it a selfish, or could be like, well, you feel good because there could be different reasons that you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like if you're hungry, right, and you eat, you might feel good because your body was hungry, and so it's like, well, and so it could be like in some ways, feeling good could be sort of a reinforcing, like, hey, this is a positive reinforcement, and the feeling is a way to sort of positively reinforce something that is inherently good. But yeah, I'm not sure if that's sort of necessarily the reason you should believe that it's true or not.
Yeah,
So
right. And I like that because I thought he was going towards, is altruism real? And then he took a different turn than I expected. And really what he got to is, or this is what it produces in my mind, is empathy or is helping others an evolved trait? And are we wired to feel good about helping other people? Good. Thank you, Mango.
Do you want to speak, Mango, or should we continue on?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm worried I'm going to interrupt. I just loved this response of his when I was listening. I was trying to think like what would be a good reason for me, and I logically went where he went as well. I thought it made sense to me.
Think about this, because what you're thinking of when we talk about epistemology, we can talk about value claims, and we can talk about truth claims. And I would say that what you're talking about is a value claim, right? So that's something that you believe is valuable. How could we turn that into a truth claim? Like we say that, this is my belief, and here's what's true about it. So we can get to kind of like a true or false. And it may not be possible to do that.
Sure.
Right? There's some things that are kind of inherently about values, and those are important to us.
Right.
I'm wondering, Nick.
I'm conducting the ultimate sin in the Pierce Watkins universe. I'm value claim hunting normative claims.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might not do that today, right? I'm like 2 weeks further on in my SE journey, and I'm trying to do that less.
I'm wondering, when I first heard this, I was like, I wonder what's going on in Nick's head right now. Like, what kind of answer is he thinking that what's his name, Eddie? That Eddie
Yeah.
might give. What are the potential answers here? What do you think that he could potentially give him?
I think, well, I can come from in terms of my motivation. I think I probably come preloaded with better tools for dealing with truth claims. And so I think at that moment I was kind of not knowing where to go. And so I wasn't really prepared to handle it in that way. And so I feel it's a little awkward, I think what I did. But in terms of where I think he might go with that, I think what I was thinking, really what I'm trying to get to is, does he have a belief about something that underlies the value? In other words, is there a like, I believe the universe is like this, and that's why I think it's important to help people. Like, I believe that social cohesion is important. I believe that we need to support our tribe. I believe that the species will die out if we don't all support each other. That sort of thing. So that's I think the sort of thing that I was expecting to find, or fishing for.
Okay.
I don't know, but
I couldn't think of any, so that's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of fascinating. I really struggle with normative claims too, and I've never once thought to just ask, "Hey, I think this is a value claim. What's the truth claim underpinning your value claim?"
Yeah.
Is that taboo? Like, should we not do that?
I
think
do a
it
lot. I love to open up the inner workings of SE, and I'm especially when I'm struggling for a question, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll say, I'm trying to figure out what the right question to ask here is. So it's like, I hear you making a bunch of claims, and I would like to establish, like, how you're thinking about, like, what your underlying thinking is that gets you to this. And so, I do try to, or I'll say, hey, well, if you watch the Josh video, the first claims on trains video that just came out this week, there's a moment at which I tell him, it's like, I asked you this specific question because I'm trying to get to this specific thing.
Mm.
Right. And so I'm really trying to kind of expose that. And I think yet that's, if you're teaching people what you're doing at the same time. So it's kind of like having it's the meta cognition, right? So you're not only getting them to think about their belief and their reasons, but you're also teaching them, oh, here's how you look for reasons, and here's how you conduct these kind of conversations. And I think maybe it probably also helps me, because sometimes thinking out loud about something helps me formulate it better than if I'm just trying to do it. So I don't want there to be, like, there's this inner dialogue where I'm going, well, it's like strategy. Okay, what do? I do outsider test? Is this right? Do a real value chain check? Do I do this? Do I do that? I'd rather just have that be part of the conversation. Because I'll frequently, well, I don't know about frequently. I'm thinking of a particular conversation I had with a theist, Christian, where I did a real reason check, and she said, no, that wouldn't reduce my confidence because I've got all these other things, right? It was kind of like whack-a-mole with the claims. And so I told her, look, I don't think we've discovered yet what the real reason is that you believe. And that's the thing that I said, hey, I want to leave you with this. Like, if we get to talk again, I really want to get to, like, what's the actual reason that you believe. And so I like to kind of expose those things. So yeah. But I think in this particular case, I think I was just struggling for how to move forward in the conversation, and so talking about the process kind of helped me kind of get there.
I like the collaborative angle personally. I was thinking this might be straight from SE, but like how would your life be different if you didn't value this, or something along those lines, maybe?
if you didn't help people, how would your life be different? I like that. Yeah, Mango, please do interrupt when we're talking, because so far I really liked what you've had to say, and I think you are bringing a different perspective that I really like. So
Oh, thanks.
speak up, walk over us. We'll
Okay,
we'll do it. Why shouldn't you?
I guess from someone who is fairly new to SE, I would say that I didn't know what a normative claim was. So
I didn't either until this painfully long thread that Pierce started.
yeah.
It took me a long time to kind of get what was going on, but then once I started going, I'm like, oh, okay, there's some interesting points in there. Actually, I don't think I understood that thread until I had a few claims that were more value-based, and I started to get kind of the difference between them.
I thought you were going to say had a few beers. I mean, that could apply as well.
That could do it as well. But no, it was like after I'd had a few conversations, not really realizing that they were different sorts of conversations, I started to realize, oh, okay, there is a difference between this and, there's a difference between God is real and, let's see.
Everyone should vote.
Yeah, and everyone should vote. That's right. It's time for another reminder. We're coming up on election season, folks. Don't sit at home. Make sure you're registered. Make sure your community is registered. Just vote.
Agreed.
Right,
Have you read the new module on claims yet? It was under, external review probably a couple months ago now.
I haven't read any of the stuff that hasn't been released. I have a smattering of background in content development, and I have a very busy life, and so I think if I started pulling at the thread of helping with the course, I could go deep into that and overcommit myself.
Okay, great. All right.
So I've been trying to stay away from it, just because. Now I did just finish phase 1 of the course, and I'm looking forward to phase 2 because I got to get my little certificate. But no, I haven't yet.
Well, we're shooting for November, so we'll try to get it there.
Yeah, I mean, true or not, I mean, I guess I think it's true, at least for me personally, that helping others brings me sort of a sense of happiness or joy.
Okay.
And I think that is maybe I think is generally true for many people. Not all. I mean, there's a wide variety of people, but I think
There
for
sure
a lot of people, they find value and joy in helping others. So,
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. So why is doing things that you feel good a good thing?
I mean, I think there's to a certain degree, I think there's joy or feeling good has its own sort of inherent value if it doesn't sort of come at the cost of harming somebody else.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
if there's just sort of, I don't know. Yeah. So that's.
I think I may have struggled with that question or answering that question as well as Eddie. I think what you asked, like, what is good about feeling good? I think.
Why is making you feel good? Good. Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I think there's the middle part of this conversation. I'm really searching for the next thread, and I think we get there later. But definitely, like, you can hear from the last question we were talking about, turning the value claim into the truth claim. You can hear him really struggling with that, right? And I think that shows, okay, that was not really a useful question. I feel like that was kind of a throwaway question. And now I feel like I'm just kind of struggling to get to something because I'm not quite sure where to go. I don't want the conversation to end. Like, I feel that, like, there's some place to get to, but but we're not there yet.
Fair enough. One thing that
There's
I've
mo-
tried doing.
Mm.
Go ahead, Reed.
There was a moment where some may interpret something he said as relativism. You know, it's something about, for
True
me,
for me.
but it was
Yeah.
really a personal claim. Like, for me, helping others makes me feel good. So that's just, him giving testimony of his own personal consciousness. And those types of claims
Yeah.
are fine in terms of true for me. Personal
Right.
stuff like that is usually fine.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not. Yeah, I wouldn't think of. That's not where I'm going to get out the Tic Tacs and start talking about. Can there be both not eating them out? I just thought about a potential question in there. What do you think it is about helping people that makes you feel good? What do you think about that as a question? What is it about helping others that makes you feel good?
Yeah. What do you get out of it? I wonder if we could answer that question. Like if we were putting ourselves in his shoes, like could you answer the question you're asking or guess? I do like your question, by the way. I didn't want to skip over that.
No, I mean, where I would tend to go with that, I think if I was asked that, is I would probably talk a little bit about, like the biological sources of empathy and mirror neurons and, and the evolution of society and the fact that, you're kind of wired feeling good about other people feeling good is one of the ways that we bond societies together, and it's probably an evolved trait, and it's adaptive because it helps bring the society together and extend the life of the species. That's probably where I'd go with it. Does anyone else have
I'd probably ask, what's behind this feeling good? What underlies it? That's how I would ask it. I don't know if that would land or not, but
yeah.
I don't know if I would have pursued this claim from the get-go as the main claim, because it seems very obvious, and it almost seems like he's just appeasing you. Like, this is such a claim that no one would disagree with, so we can just talk about this without getting into any real conflict. It's just to,
I frequently say that I'm so goddamn sick of Seattle and its fucking positivity, because half the people I talk to, it's like, you should help other people, you should not, don't fucking be a dick, dude, was the do it on the train the other day, right? It's like this, or people are intrinsically good is another one that I get a lot. And there have been a few times when it gets to something later, and like I don't really want to change metaphorical trains in midstream to horribly mash up a couple of metaphors, but yeah, it's like I talked to a guy the other day who his claim was that there's only 10 months of the year, not 12, and that led to time isn't real. But at the end of that chat, it got to, well, how do you know that time isn't real? Oh, it was revealed to me by the Holy Spirit. So at that point we got off the train, but I have his email address, and so I'm gonna follow up with him at a later date.
Okay.
Interesting.
we'll continue on then.
In some ways, I do think it's not that like not like a hedonistic like pleasure, but in the sense of like there is some value, or there's some inherentness to sort of joy and happiness, kind of pursuit of happiness type of thing to a certain degree.
As a hypothetical, how do you balance your happiness in an action with the benefit, with the results of your actions on others?
Right.
And so kind of as a hypothetical, what if you found out that in you helping someone, something that really made you feel good, it actually was a net loss for the person that you were helping?
Right. Then I would not and so that's where I feel like helping others, if it in some ways, that's where, to me, if there's a net benefit for both you and the other person, where it's a win-win. But if somehow what you're doing is not helping that other person, even if you might feel good about it, I think overall, like I wouldn't feel good if I knew that there was sort of like, some harm.
Yeah.
Then it would sort of detract from that. And so, yeah, so in many ways, what helps me feel good about something is either sort of knowing there's no harm to anybody else, or that there actually is some sort of positive effect to somebody else.
So how would you discover what method would you use to determine that you're having a net positive effect?
And now I've turned it into a truth claim.
Yeah.
now I'm on home turf. So I feel like from here the conversation goes much better. But it is, now we're talking about truth claim. Are you really helping someone?
And if I remember correctly, you stick on kind of this truth claim for a bit, but then I think you kind of slowly get into kind of strategies, if I remember correctly. So
Yeah, it's like, how do you help someone? Do you give them $5 or do you give them a $5 pair of socks? Right? What are they going to do? Because there's the whole thing of like, oh, they're just going to go buy drugs, and then he gets into, well, maybe if you give him the socks, that frees up the $5 he gets from someone else to go buy drugs, because he's already got his socks taken care of. But I'm getting ahead of us.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, it's sort of easier if I think if there's sort of a more direct interaction with somebody. It's sort of harder if it's a more just the impact is more spread out. Then it's hard to measure. So, but if it's a direct interaction and you can sort of, there's sort of an immediate, for example, if somebody is struggling with something and you help them out, and they, you can sort of see a direct benefit, or then I think that you can, that's one way to measure it. But at the same time, you also have to wonder if, like, well, even if it's a short-term sort of positive, then there's sort of like the longevity of it. Is there some sort of long-term negative, sort of like, is there some sort of enabling behavior or something like that? So that's all kind of goes into that sort of analysis in my mind.
How can we test to determine which of those things is true? How could you be more certain?
Yeah, that's, it's really hard to, I think.
Test what? The strategies for something?
How can we test to see whether he's actually helped someone, as opposed to he just feels good because he thinks he's helped someone?
I don't think these are areas where we need to help people think more critically about things. This is very usually common sense stuff that people usually have no problem with. This is very general, mundane, could help others claim. And it's usually a perfectly fine test to see if they, if they felt better about it and there's no harm happening with the other person. This is all very common sense. So,
it is, but that's why. So I'm fine with SEing claims that are trivial, because to me it's all about getting to the way they think about their justifications and not about the claim itself. So I'm introducing the idea of testing, and maybe this is not heard, but kind of what I'm thinking is, it's not really about whether helping people is good. I think we all think helping people is good, but what is the epistemology that leads to that he will then go bring to other more thorny claims.
Encouraging self-reflection. Yeah. And I mean, it does get a little philosophical, but can we ever know that we're helping? Well, it is a line of questioning. Go ahead, Pierce.
If you did want to get to something perhaps a little bit more meaningful, you could have asked, like, can you think of an opportunity, or not an opportunity, can you think of a time in which someone was trying to help someone else, but they actually did more harm than good? You can talk about that situation and say, hey, what's a better strategy that they could have used? Why wasn't their strategy effective? What can we learn from this? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, me too.
There was something that he said in that last bunch of phraseology that I don't, and maybe it wasn't worth jumping on, but he said, sometimes it's easier to tell you're helping if you have a direct interaction rather than if it's more spread out. And I mean, he was just talking off the cuff, but I don't know what he meant by more spread out. Does he mean
maybe like donating to like a
or like hearing feedback, maybe like the person can provide feedback, maybe if it's like
the direct interaction part, yeah, but I'm wondering about the thing about more spread out, and maybe he is thinking about, I give to an organization that I don't know what they're doing that's helping. Yeah. But again, he's being accosted by some weird guy with a recorder in his face on a train, so he's thinking on his feet, and I think he's doing a darn good job.
Test a lot of this stuff when it comes to human behavior. I mean, I think it's so hard to know what brings health and joy and those are, the only thing I can sort of go on is what sort of how things sort of might impact me and sort of how I might relate to it, but it's really hard for me to know if that's how somebody else is going to react to it.
So you're using yourself as a model to model the behavior on to see whether you would be benefit.
Yeah, so either me or like what I've read or, to the extent there is some sort of research or social science out there, I would take that into account, but also understanding that a lot of the social sciences are soft sciences and not hard sciences and are hard to determine.
So why is examining how you would feel or what the effect would be on you a good reason to believe that same effect will happen to someone else?
I mean, in many ways, it's kind of the only thing I have to go on. So it's, it's kind of how we determine all of our sort of worldviews.
I just want to point out, I used that exact same turn of phrase that I used earlier. And that's the one that I learned from David and I've been trying to use. Why is blah a good reason to blah?
Yeah, and this time it was more specific because of
because
the previous
we're talking about a truth claim, and so it fits better, or I know how to use it better. Maybe. Sorry, Reed, I cut you off.
Yeah, it's just sometimes it's asked like, why is this way or this reason a good reason to believe something? But it should be like a claim like this, or for claims similar to this.
Yeah, I agree. The first time I used it in this conversation, I was trying it on and it didn't land.
Is that how we?
Oh, Reed, did you have something to add?
And just the premise behind that kind of question is to check for reliable methods, like reliabilism, the form of justificationism. Is that what you're trying to get at? You're trying to check to see if they think in terms of justification, and especially reliable justifications.
I imagine that I'm introducing the thought that of examining why something is a good reason. So the intent is to push it one layer down from this is my reason to this is the way I figure out what good reasons are.
Yeah, good for what? For justifying the claim infallibly or sufficiently?
Just, I think at this point, it's just getting the metacognition layer. It's like getting people to think about their justifications.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's the thought. I mean, I'd love to hear other thoughts if you think that's not hitting the spot.
I'll potentially talk about it some more after we listen to some more.
Cool.
Yeah,
I think it's a core.
Yes, on the train. You should have seen it when we were filming it.
I bet. I mean, I don't really understand how you do it. I mean, other than like through reading and or communicating with others and listening to how they view it. But I think that would, when we hear somebody else talk about their sort of experiences or worldview, we have to filter it through our own experiences. And if it's, I think for us to be able to make sense of it, we have to sort of connect it to something that we've sort of experienced or thought about. Otherwise, it's pretty hard. Now, we can sort of imagine, but I still think even when we're imagining somebody else's worldview and thoughts, there has to be some sort of like scaffolding or connection to the way that our experiences. Otherwise, it's really hard. So that's,
Would there be a way to find out maybe after the fact what the result of your actions had?
I mean, sure, certainly by like talking to, again, either that other person or multiple people. It might be harder again if there's an indirect connection.
Yeah.
So let's say you're driving and, you either do something, let somebody in or don't let somebody in, or, you know what I mean? Or whatever, and, I don't know how you would talk to everybody, but you can kind of generally get a sense of how people feel about how somebody else drives or something like that. And,
Okay. Yeah. The hypothetical situation that's occurred to me as we've been talking is like, let's say you see somebody on the street who's apparently homeless or in need. Like, what could be the effects of giving them $5 versus what could be the effects of giving them like a $5 pair of socks?
Okay.
Like, how would you evaluate the potential outcomes, and how would you determine what the right course of action would be and what might be the most moral value for everyone involved?
Yeah, I mean, in that sort of situation, I think there's sort of different lines of thought in terms of like, there's sort of, and this is where, not being an expert myself and sort of what people are going through, but I think, I do read and try to pay attention, and there's sort of a line. There's some research that shows, for example, giving people money, like there's sort of the concern that if you give people homeless money, they're going to use it on drugs or things that they're addicted, but that apparently does not sort of play out in the research. The research seems to show that they will use that for meeting their basic needs. Now I'm not there's probably a wide range, and so but those would be the things that I would be concerned about or thinking about, like if I'm giving this person money, am I sort of really helping them? There might be some immediate relief, but like what is this really helping them long term, right? This, and so that's what would be going through my brain, and that's sort of like, even if you talk to that person immediately, like it's hard to know like what would be the long term meaning. And there can be short-term, it can just be a short-term thing, and that's
Yeah.
okay too. But if you're trying to make, a longer term sort of analysis, then that's hard to measure. But
Yeah. So like, for example, like I'm just,
Mhm.
I'm thinking through this right at the same time as
Yeah.
you, because I've also thought about like, what do we give?
Mhm.
How do we help people who are on
Sure.
the street?
Yeah.
So if you were to evaluate
Mhm.
them taking $5 and going and buying their next fix,
Sure.
or taking the $5 and
Yeah.
buying a meal that they need,
Right.
how do you evaluate the moral
Mhm.
difference between those?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly wouldn't feel good about sort of like if I felt like I was just helping them buy their next fix. I mean, on the one hand, they might need that in the short term, but long term, I would feel like I'm supporting a behavior that is harming them. Right. And so that doesn't feel great. And so then it's like, well, you think you're doing something to help, but maybe you're harming them. I think buying a meal,
Columbia
I would
City.
feel better about, but then so you also have to wonder, like, well, okay, they spent that money to buy the meal, but then does that free up some money for them to buy a fix if they are addicted to something? And so, that's just sort of how I would analyze it. But
Cool.
this is my stop.
All right.
A really interesting
Yeah.
discussion.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for the interview.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's it.
One of the reasons I really like that last bit was that's something that I really wrestle with. A while ago now, I stopped being willing to give money to panhandlers. And part of the reason is that there's a number of times that I believe that the people who were panhandling were not legitimately in need, but were scamming. And so I just started to distrust the whole process around that. And so I really struggle with that myself, kind of morally. Like, how can I best? So I have ways that I, to people that I donate to, things that I support, but I feel bad about people who are, and Seattle has a bad homelessness, houselessness problem, unhoused problem. So that's something I really struggle with. So I felt kind of a personal connection. And so I sort of felt at the end there, I was working through some of my own issues while having that conversation. So I think probably there was a little agenda for me there of hey, this is almost therapy for me, and hearing somebody else talk about it, and especially hearing him mention anecdotally a study. Now, I don't know what study he was talking about, but it's like, oh, I've heard this study that there is this. It's like, oh, okay, well, I don't know if that's true, but it's interesting, because those are things that I've thought about too.
It would be an interesting claim to kind of settle on is the strategy of helping others is giving to the homeless, giving cash to the homeless.
Right.
Like, so you might make explicitly that's the claim. Whenever you come across someone homeless on the street, you should give them cash as the claim. That would be interesting. Then that's pretty much, that's an interesting strategic claim that you could test empirically potentially.
One of the things I want to start doing is I want to figure out a way to do SE with people living on the street.
Wow.
I've got this checklist of crazy SE ideas I want to do, and that's
I don't know about that.
Walk into a church was one of them. Claims on a trains. We did the first video we recorded last night of drunk epistemology, which I will introduce on the podcast pretty soon, including I'm going to do a little intro on the ethical considerations of that. But yeah,
I think we have something in the preparing module about and making sure you're not drunk or anything. But
yeah, so there's
fun experiment.
The issues around are mostly around informed consent, and
Yeah.
so the idea is you go in, you find somebody who's sober, you explain the process, you get informed consent, you go to the bar, you line up. What we did with last night was 3 shots. I buy them 3 shots of their choice. I get the same 3 shots for me. We go boom, 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 and we do the chat. So we did that twice. We did that twice. So I'm
It's
really
like
looking
hot
forward-
ones, kind of, but
You're
with
a
alcohol.
brave-
like how exactly. So with a lot of these, I'm not necessarily trying to make SE more effective. I'm trying to find ways. How do we make good TV so that we're maybe getting more viewership, maybe making it entertaining for people to watch, and also evaluating. Okay, does this work? Well, I found out doing SE on the train, I get a lot more chats than I get sitting at a table and waiting for people to approach me. So that was a success. Drunk SE, will it be a success? I don't know. We're gonna release some videos to the community, have people watch it, rave it, pan it, see what happens. I already have some of my own observations on that. Does it make sense to have SE with the homeless? I would love, and here's my idea, is to go in, specifically introduce the topic of, why are you/why are people living on the street? What are the things that lead to this, right? And then kind of explore that and kind of SE that and see what the reasoning is and the epistemology and underlying that. They're all ideas.
Do they want to get off the street? And if so,
Right.
what's their strategy? That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very intrigued by that. Yeah, that's interesting. I would watch it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to think of like, what are all these crazy ideas we could do that are different and kind of take a different angle on it.
Do you have any? Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Do you have any goals beyond making good TV for like that one?
For the homeless one?
Mm-hmm.
I have often wanted to kind of interact more with people who are unhoused. I would love to know how I can, without giving too much of myself away, how I can be more help to that community. Like, I don't know what the answers are there, but Seattle's got a bad problem. I had a really interesting SE chat, not recorded, where a woman, this was one of those people are inherently good claims, and where those chats usually go, or where I guess I usually lead them, is, people say, well, people are inherently good because they'll help other people. It's like, well, will they really? Well, okay, they'll help their family. And I've kind of, the model I have in my mind is, you help your family, and then to a little less degree, you help your tribe, and then you help your larger community. And there's basically these set of concentric circles. But the really interesting thing that came out of that chat was this woman introduced the idea that, and the way she phrased it was, I just really don't understand why liberal people hate the homeless. And that was kind of like the offhand comment that you made. But the way I integrated it into my model is, you've got these concentric circles of care. And I think homeless people are not on the map. So people can't place them within this map of people they care about, right? They're not family. They're not your tribe. They're not your community. They're not, like, they're other. So, part of the problem why it's so hard to help or get support to help homeless people, again, and I'm making a claim here, but this is like my hypothesis, is that we other them because we don't recognize them as our tribe, or maybe even we don't recognize them as our species, which is a harsh way to say it, but I think behaviorally, right, that's the way it is. Like, if you saw someone on the street who was struggling, who just it's like they're drunk and they're having trouble getting home, you're going to help them. But if you see someone who's unhoused, right, it's like, what the reaction I have is, well, if I try to start helping this person, I don't know who they are, I don't know why they're on the street. If I bring them into the house and let them stay, and are they still going to be here like 6 years later and causing all kinds of problems? So I think there's something in there about not my tribe that's happening there. But this is all just kind of crazy speculation based on a couple of conversations. And so I think going and talking with people who are in that state, I think might ground me in more I might get more information. Because I think it's like, I think it's unfair to assume that people who are living on the street either have mental health issues or drug issues or both. I know there is some of that, but then there's also people who are, just normal people who just fell on the wrong side of the economic spectrum.
I think it has like a lot of potential, just giving people a voice who don't have one. Then there's also, I'm thinking about like, I don't know, there's TikToks and it can be invasive and of
Right.
people. There's definitely challenges, but it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I worry about the ethical considerations of that too, because am I then, profiting?
Exploiting.
It's like I don't make money from SE, but am I exploiting people? Yeah, who are on the street by doing that?
Right.
So I don't know, but I probably overthink the ethical considerations of everything. So there you go.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's
Probably.
I overthinking anything is not a good thing. Thinking things to death can be good. So my wife is waiting in the other room for us to have some dessert and watch some TV, and then I need to drive back out to Westport, which is a couple hours drive. So
All right.
for me, this is a good moment to bow out. If you guys want to keep talking, of course, I would love to tune in later and listen to what you had to say about me behind my back.
It was really fun. It was nice talking to
Yeah,
you.
this is great.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I watch a lot of recordings of live stream shows. This is the first time I've ever been a guest on a show. I have been a caller on a number of shows on the line, but yeah, this has been a pleasure. And Pierce and Reed, both of you, it's great to see you again. Well, actually, Mango too. You listened in on a chat that I did on Discord with Paul B, and I won't say the topic because we'll get demonetized or something. And Matt, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, nice meeting you too, man.
Yeah.
Yep. Good to see you. Good job.
All right. Ciao.
All right. See you, Nick.
Now I
Did
just
anyone?
it's my first time in StreamYard, so now I need to figure out how to leave. There it is. All right.
We got you.
Ciao, everyone. Oh, just vote.
I almost forgot.
Anybody have any last words before I play the outro?
No, I'm just looking forward to the rest of the series of his video on the trains series that he did with David. The first one was really good. If you haven't seen it, they released like a crazy edited compilation video of like a lot of their talks. It's just fascinating. I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, this is really cool. Like I feel like the experience for most people going out and trying to get interviews is not the one that Nick has had here. Like he really hit the ground running. That's fascinating.
He's very confident.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys for
Yeah.
letting me join. I had a lot of fun. It was interesting.
Glad you decided to come.
Yeah.
All right. Without further ado, I'm gonna play that outro.